Yeah, I just realized Kobe Black not going into the portal made producer Matt's job a lot easier. Got to keep a couple of those clips in there in the opener. Welcome back to On Texas Football, our Tuesday night live stream. I'm Jeff Howe. He's CJ Vogel. This Tuesday night live stream is brought to you by our friend Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. I'll tell you more about our great sponsors throughout the night. CJ, how's everything going in your world, man? For those that don't know, man, CJ was down pretty bad over the weekend. I knew you had the allergy deal, and was there a bad taco in there too? I think maybe
The bad taco was a week ago, so the train just never stopped flowing off the flowing's not probably the right
Yeah,
word.
that's probably a poor choice of words there, sir.
But from the taco to the allergies or whatever, I'm still lingering to the fact that the laptop is out in the portal as well. We need some. January's not been great, Jeff. I've always said this. 2027. I think about 2 years ago, I claimed 2027 was going to be my year. All right, I claimed it. Whatever happens good in 2027, or in my life, it's coming in 2027. 2026, I could tell, just not going to be my year.
A good friend and a mentor once told me, he said, "Hey, everybody has that year in your life where everything seems like it's a cluster, but you don't realize until later that it's all coming together for the following year to be the big year where everything starts happening." So maybe
Hopefully.
26 CJ is the year where you don't really realize it, but things will start. Things are working behind the scenes, start coming together.
Hey,
Right.
fingers crossed. I'm in for it.
So CJ's laptop will be out of the portal at some point. He'll be getting it back. What's not going to be coming back, CJ, to the 40 acres, it looks like, is Nick Brooks. Now, look, we know we've got plenty of offensive line questions, and we'll take them. Super chats, as always, jump to the front of the line. Hey, before we do that, I do want to address something. CB asked, did Amanda jump in the portal? No. Amanda was hosting her Tuesday and Wednesday live streams during the season. So the season is over. So Amanda will be back in the fall because she has other obligations. So she's a very valued member of the team. But, yeah, she'll be back in the fall. So, no, she did not enter the portal. She's just on hiatus, I guess, if you want to call it that. Extended vacation in Bora Bora.
Mm-hmm.
So, CJ, offensive line stuff. Let's talk about it. Nick Brooks enters the transfer portal today. And there's been a couple of moves that Texas has had, a couple of portal defections that only a couple that I've been like, man, that hurts. This was one of the few that I'm like, man, this really hurts. Like Bo Barnes was one. Zeno Mozolo was one. Like there haven't been that many. This is when anytime you lose an offensive lineman that has starting potential, it's never a good thing.
Yeah, this one hit me by surprise. Typically, and Jeff, I know that we've talked about it behind the scenes and off air. You can kind of construct a list of guys as the roster, kind of gets dwindled down. You say, okay, could he enter? Will he enter? Do we know if they're going to enter? And I said before the portal opened, Texas probably sit around 20, maybe 23 guys. When it's all said and done. Well, obviously, it's looking like it's going to exceed those numbers. But altogether, I didn't ever really have Nick Brooks as a name to watch to enter the portal. And so as I was driving home today, just went and got some Sudafed. I was driving home and I get the notification and it says Nick Brooks has entered the portal. I kind of go, whoa, wait a minute. This wasn't what I had anticipated. And how this offensive line cycle has gone in the portal window, Jeff. I mean, this is the fifth name from that room to now enter. So, it's head scratching, but I think there's a plan in place. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit as well.
Yeah. So a lot of the questions are flying in. So is he actually in the portal or what? So Nick Brooks's name is not yet in the transfer portal. This is an intent to enter the portal. CJ, based on the early intel that we've gathered, it seems highly unlikely that Nick Brooks is going to pull his name out or just not process the paperwork or whatever step that would involve, which is unfortunate. But I'm kind of with you, and this is my hope. If that's the case where he is for sure gone, I would hope the Texas staff wouldn't do that unless they had a plan or they know there's some things coming down the pike.
And this has been exactly what we've talked about the entire window so far is, thing number one happens to lead up to thing number two to come in, right? And that's basically been what we've seen with this Texas portal window so far. What's been really interesting, and Jeff, I went through the last couple of portal cycles for Texas. Texas is now up to 5 names from that 2025 offensive line room that have entered the portal, right? That's Connor Stroh, Neto Umazolo, Daniel Cruz, Nate Kibble, and now Nick Brooks. That's 5 guys. They only had 7 in the first 4 portal windows beforehand. So this is all brand new to see guys leave the offensive line room right now. And so what does that mean moving forward? Well, hey, we've certainly heard some big names down the road for Texas, right? You look at Jordan Seaton, who just entered the portal yesterday or announced his intention. Is that who Texas will go pursue? We believe that they're going to be in it, right? Absolutely. But ultimately, it's all brand new, and it's all about how the other dominoes fall that will ultimately look at this one way or the other in a good or bad way.
No doubt. And we knew offensive line attrition was coming at some point because, like you mentioned, the numbers have been pretty low. And I think we knew it for a couple of reasons. One, at some point, some of those guys were going to have to go elsewhere if they wanted to play. But two, I'll never, it's very clear to me. You and I were doing, I think, the immediate reactions after the Florida game. It was one of those shows we do right after the games. And you said, like, one of your first comments was, look, they're going to hit the transfer portal in January looking for offensive linemen because it was really bad that day. And we knew it was bad, but I think the Florida game where it was like, okay, now you've got a serious problem on your hands. And look, Nick Brooks is a really promising player. I think, I don't think the staff misevaluated him from a talent standpoint, but, hey, he didn't look comfortable at guard, and he had never played guard. And if he's not on the plans at guard, he's not starting over Trevor Goosby or Brandon Baker. So maybe the best case for Nick Brooks is he was going to be the number 3 tackle. And for a guy that started games last year, CJ, and I don't know the exact reason, but I would imagine maybe number 3 tackle is a position that really didn't excite him all that much. And the potential to compete for a spot at guard maybe didn't excite him all that much.
Well, yeah, put your shoes in, put yourself in Nick Brooks' shoes at the moment, right? You're a guy that basically skipped the line and jumped into that top 7 rotation for Texas immediately. You're a talented kid. You skipped over Daniel Cruz, Jaden Chapman, Andre Kojo, who was injured, Nate Kibble, and immediately you found yourself thrust into action right away at a position you haven't ever played before. And now with Texas bringing back Brandon Baker, now with Texas bringing back Trevor Goosby, you're a guard or you're a tackle, right? You've never played guard before. Where's your path to the field in 2025 or 2026? I don't think you have one. Not at the tackle position, not where you want to make your big money. And it's unfortunate because obviously I think we are all kind of accepting the fact that the days of sitting somewhere and developing behind the scenes, Jeff, I mean, it's gone, right? It just is. So that's unfortunate. But altogether, we've found out and we've learned, and we're seeing it firsthand. Teams across the country will pay for talented players to come in and play for them immediately, whether they've seen the field before or not. There is production that they want and need that kids on the Texas bench will offer.
The good thing with the offensive line situation is, I know there were, if you did a watch with us, there were some hot sports opinions about Connor Stroh's play during the season, but you look at Connor Stroh going to Kansas, Daniel Cruz going to NC State, Nate Kibble going to Baylor. We'll see where Nick Brooks winds up. Those guys are going to power conference schools. So they're still Power 4, which tells you, hey, there was something there. The bad news, CJ, none of those guys are going to play their best football for the Texas Longhorns.
And that's the unfortunate part is the investment, the excitement that comes out of their recruitment. You sit there and you say, okay, I can't wait to see how after 2 or 3 years, they ultimately jump into the fold, and that development is now playing somewhere else. So that's the unfortunate part. But this is something that I wrote earlier today, Jeff, and it's something that I think is going to hold true moving forward. And I know that we've talked about that NFL model, but tell me this isn't exactly what we're seeing currently, right? I think you're only going to see Texas, I think you're only going to see them hold about 10 to 12, maybe 13 offensive linemen moving forward. I think that's just what it is. And that's a change from what we've seen from 14 to 16, and maybe 17 in terms of depth, right? Offensive linemen are expensive.
Yeah.
And we just talked about it for the last week. If your dollar's not on the field, your dollar is being wasted. And I say that because, look, over the last 4 years, Texas has had 7 offensive linemen see more than 100 snaps in every single season, just 7. And I think it was 2022, there were 8. But for the most part, you have your starting 5 and maybe 2 guys that come in due to injury. That's it.
Yeah.
You don't need 14 or 15 guys anymore. You need top end 7 or 8 guys, and that's about it.
My ideal number for the offensive line has always been you're in really good shape if you can go into a season with 8 starting caliber guys.
Yes.
For your front 5, ideally you've got like a swing tackle, a guy that can play basically your number 3 tackle. You've got one of those top 8 has to be, you got to have 2 guys that can snap, a couple of guys that can snap, or maybe one of your starting guards that can snap. You've got a guy who's strictly an interior guy. And again, maybe he's the guy that snaps. And then you've got a guy who really is a multi-positional kind of swing guy. Like, I know he didn't play much this year, but like Jaden Chapman would fit that third bill. A guy, he can play guard, he can play tackle, whatever. In a pinch, you could just throw him in there. I think you could still have that, but to your point, like your other, yes, in the numbers you're throwing out there, like your other 4 or 5 at that point would probably just be like strictly developmental guys.
Yes.
At that point.
Yeah.
Like high school guys that like, I hate to borrow the old Fran Fraschilla line during his NBA draft coverage. He's talking about international players. Like he's a year away from being a year away. Like that's basically kind of what the rest of your O-line scholarship count's going to look like.
Well, I think that's it. You're gonna have your starting 5. You're gonna have that swing rotational guy is 6, and then in this case, does Andre Kojo return? 7, right? Jaden Chapman, that's an 8th guy. Now, this is assuming Texas goes out and adds a piece or 2 to get to your starting 5. Behind that, there are your 3 true freshmen, right? Your John Turntines, Nicholas Robertson, those guys that are still a year away from being a year away. And this, of course, is considering the fact that Texas has so far held on to the Coleman twins, Jackson Christian, right? You feel good about what that could be moving forward, but at the same time, you're not breaking the bank to keep these guys on the sideline. And if they want to go elsewhere, hey, you're going to have money somewhere saved up as a result of that to then go out into the portal and get yourself a starting caliber offensive guard or tackle.
Yep. All right. Let's thank our first sponsor of the night. That's our friend Andy Ludicky. Our lead sponsor is My Perfect Franchise. Stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO and no control over the money you can make or your schedule in general? Just give Andy a call. He'll take you through a process to help find a business that will fit your skill sets and financial goals. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your destiny, call or email Andy at myperfectfranchise.net, or give him a call, 404-973-9901. And again, big thanks to Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise for sponsoring the Tuesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. All right, CJ, let's go ahead and get to some of these supers. The supers are coming in as they have been during portal season. Rocky P starts us off. Not sure anyone will ask this, but is Seaton signed yet? So Jordan Seaton, a big offensive tackle out of Colorado, going to be a top NFL draft pick when he comes out. As CJ laid it out, he is announced he is entering the portal. The plan is for him to enter the portal, but until he actually enters the portal, his name appears in the portal, CJ, it's all conjecture at this point.
Yeah. That's kind of the next big domino to fall here is when he officially enters. Of course, Texas has had a couple of guys that they've reeled back in from wanting to enter the portal as a result of that Colorado, what is it, Jeff, 48 business hours to hold the paperwork before they have to allow him into the portal. That's basically just their last second pitch of, hey, can we make this work? It's like a boyfriend and girlfriend fighting before they break up. He's on the doorstep singing and dancing, saying, baby, please, and she's going to throw the clothes out on the lawn on the lawn anyway. So that's where Colorado is at currently. But until that name is officially in the portal, that's kind of where we're having to sit and wait with the Jordan Seaton sweepstakes.
You been there lately, getting your stuff boxed up and thrown out on the lawn? No? Hey, that's good. That's what I like to hear, CJ. I just hope you weren't speaking from experience and we're just talking about some generalities here. Jason Nabliski. Jason, thank you for the question. As always, how are we supposed to have any faith in Sark on the O-line? It was a blind spot last year, and it is absolutely worse this year. He has once again allowed a couple of good prospects to go elsewhere. I don't know that I'd say it's worse this year. Trevor Gooseby has gotten better. Brandon Baker is a much better football player now than he was a year ago. Connor Robertson, you're going to have a guy that started the back half of the year at center, so you're not breaking in a new starting center. Is it a concern? Yeah, but I think the fact, CJ, and this is where, Jason, I'll push back a little bit. I have faith because they are making the correction now. I would have loved for them to have had the foresight to say, hey, we got a first-time starting quarterback. Let's not have so many question marks on the offensive line. Let's go ahead and grab a couple of guys in the portal. They didn't do that, but now, CJ, they're correcting course. The problem is that either the guys they have targeted have either gone elsewhere, or the two Michigan kids decided to go back to Ann Arbor really threw a monkey wrench in the whole deal, because that was about as close to getting done as it can be without being official. It just didn't cross the finish line. And I know something about horseshoes and hand grenades is coming up, but that's kind of what it is. And, Mikey Bennett's a guy that they evaluated, they got on campus, and it was a really intriguing prospect. And now he's headed to Oregon because Oregon has a massive offensive line. You mentioned it earlier, and I think that's what everybody needs to remember about offensive line. Everybody needs them. Just the number of starting quality guys for a Power 4 program, they're especially to place when you're talking about the blue bloods, the national title contenders at Texas and Ohio State and Oregon. I'll even throw Indiana in there because we know Indiana's adding guys in the portal. Those type of guys that are immediately plug and play high level P4 guys, those guys are very few and far between. And when they do pop up, they're going to be expensive.
Definitely going to be expensive. And you're right, Jeff, I have to give this Texas staff a lot of credit because, some of the names that we heard at the beginning of the portal didn't go Texas's direction, right? For whatever the reason, they've then had to pivot, right? Running back especially. We're seeing at the offensive line, but if that running back situation and heist is basically what I'll call it. If that has taught you anything, it's that, hey, they're going to find a way to get the best possible options on campus. They know how big this year is, and especially the offensive line. If you think they're going to go into this season with anything less than adequate for Arch Manning, knowing this is his last year, knowing how bad the unit was a year ago, I just don't know what to tell you, right? But, this is, again, where we're at. What is today, January 13th? It's a bad offensive line now. Yeah, I agree with that, but there's still portal pieces to be added. There are still grad transfers to be scouted and evaluated later on. So this offensive line could look and should look significantly different today than what week one will look like in the fall. And here's the other thing too, just real quick. You have a first-round left tackle. You have a 5-star right tackle. You have a 5th-year center. Now it's about piecing together the other, 2 guard spots. That's a really solid foundation. I know I'm going to bat for the offensive line, but things could look significantly worse right now than what the Texas offensive line has with its 3 guys.
Yeah, I'll just kind of go back to the fact that we use the all-in terminology, and I know that's kind of gotten run into the ground a little bit, but man, this is kind of the correction portal cycle where it's like, oh, you can't afford to look at 2027 or anything. You've got to look at, hey, what's going to help us be the best team we can be for the next 12 to 13 months. And then when the season's over, then we'll put our plan in place on, hey, let's go ahead and get ready for 2027. CJ, until this changes, man, it's on the uncertainty is unnerving, but that's just kind of where it is right now.
And that's the thing. It's all about the unknown, the fear of the unknown, because, hey, this offensive line was something that last year prevented you more likely than not from achieving what goals you wanted to achieve in the season. Now you're seeing it's a slow kind of burn to get to where you want to go, and you're still sitting there saying, Jeff, I don't know if they're going to get there. You just got to let the days tick away, because I'm sure they're going to be big game hunting again.
Well, we'll check tomorrow morning, ask Tony Hills if he's got any eligibility left. Maybe Tony can give him a couple snaps at one of the guard spots this year. Let's keep going with some of these supers. Kill it. Thank you for the super chat. Said, I'm out here in Colorado. I can do what I can to get Seaton to Austin. In all seriousness, who else is Texas still targeting at offensive line? Don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. And CJ, I think that's the thing. I don't think they're putting all their eggs in one basket. As far as names right now, again, that stuff's being kept close to the vest for a reason. But I mean, I just go back to the Nick Brooks thing. I don't think that, they would, based on the early intel, I just feel like more of a fight would be put up for Nick Brooks if they didn't have a plan in place.
If he was a guy that was going to be on this offensive line in 2026, he would have been paid what he was wanted. Probably a little bit more than that, Jeff, because hey, keep the goodwill for 2027 as well. But again, that path to the field at the tackle spots, probably not worth it for Texas to put up that fight. But additionally, look, still hasn't been a decision yet for Joe Brunner, the guard from Wisconsin. Texas and Indiana thought to be in it. We'll see if he leaves the Midwest. Originally, it was thought that he was going to stay in it, but he's a guy who, depending on how some of these chips fall, could be a plug and play option for you, right? The Tellett kid out of Texas State. Texas hasn't necessarily been in it so far for him. He's been taking a couple visits across the country, but again, another plug and play option at a guard position. But that's kind of telling you, Jeff, if they're not after this kid who graded out pretty well, according to PFF this year, they're saying, hey, we can do better, and we're going to do better. And that's kind of my takeaway so far, is that they're not going to settle for what's available or what's close or anything like that. They're going to go find the guys that they believe is going to put them over the top to be national championship level contenders.
And keep in mind, the portal does technically close on Friday. That's the deadline to put your name in to submit the paperwork. It still could be a week from now, Monday or Tuesday, given that 48-hour processing period on business days. It could be then before we see that last wave of portal guys come through. So, and I don't think Texas at this point is worried about, especially if it's an older guy, like a guy that's about to graduate. I don't think they're necessarily worried about getting a special exception to get a guy late, enrolling late for spring semester classes. So we'll see how it works out. But, there still could be some really, that's, again, the Jordan Seaton thing is why we've kept saying, hey, there are going to be guys throughout this process in different waves that put their name in the portal at various points. It's not all going to be front loaded. There will be stuff going on this week. And like I said, maybe into the early part of next week, depending on when some of this paperwork gets processed. CJ, I want to pause real quick and thank a couple more of our sponsors. Let's thank our friends over at Duck Camp. Duck Camp makes gear for folks who live for being out there, whether that's in a duck blind at sunrise or on the 40 acres for a Saturday kickoff. Born right here in Austin, Duck Camp builds best-in-class hunting and fishing apparel that works just as well for a full day in the field as it does for a long day of tailgating. From sun protection shirts that keep you cool during those early season scorchers to their iconic game series hats that feel like instant classics, Duck Camp gear is ready for football season, hunting season, and every season in between. Get out there, stay out there, and hook them. Shop Duck Camp at duckcamp.com. And on Texas Football Fam, don't forget, use the promo code ONTexas25. That's ONTexas25 for 25% off of your order at duckcamp.com. And now, with the help of a couple of lifetime Longhorns, here's a word from our friends over at Advanced Pain Care.
Pros know the pain stops here.
Physical therapy helps me as an athlete then and now. And do I still need therapy? Yes. And Advanced Pain Care helps with that.
Injuries will stack up. They'll add up. You can't let those injuries get you down, and Advanced Pain Care has been very helpful for me.
We can help with whatever's got you down, from nerve damage to our spinal cord stimulator. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Same-day appointments available.
Advanced Pain Care. The pain stops here.
All right, let's get back to some of these super chats. Again, Killa Jason, everybody that's submitted one, thank you so far. Justin Yarbrough, thank you for the super chat. Out of all the guys that have entered the portal, how many do y'all believe were lured into the portal? I agree, turning the bottom of the roster, but I don't like guys that would have been frontline in 27. CJ, I think the guys that I think were, I guess, lured into the portal or decided to take their chances on the open market. I mean, I think that's some of those younger offensive linemen that, hey, they could have waited a year and maybe gotten their opportunity, but why do that when you can go get paid and go be a walk-in starter somewhere?
Yeah, again, imagine you're not given anything, right? Imagine you're basically getting one square on the Hershey bar, Jeff, and you're told you can't eat it until dinner time. And then imagine, dad comes running around the closet or running around the kitchen, and he says, here's the whole Hershey bar. You get every square and you can eat it right now. What are you gonna pick here? You're going to choose the entire Hershey bar because you like chocolate, right? And that's what a lot of these kids are being faced with at the moment. I hope that analogy landed with some of y'all. But, point is, path to the field at Texas on the offensive line, look, it's been a struggle for a lot of these guys, right? We didn't ever see Daniel Cruz in meaningful snaps. We didn't ever see Nate Kibble in meaningful snaps, right? Neto Umeozulu, 4 years, never saw him. Meanwhile, other schools across the country will say, hey, here's more money than probably what you're being offered and a guaranteed starting spot. So that's kind of where things are. Additionally, I think it's one thing to worry about the 2027 cycle or class. And how do you not, right? Goosby's likely gone. Brandon Baker could be gone after this year. Connor Robertson is gone. So you're sitting around saying, okay, well, what does that line look like in 2027? I don't know. I don't have the answer for you. What I do know is, hey, there's another portal window in between now and 2027. So, Jeff, buckle up, because we'll be doing this exact same thing again next year with Texas once again going big game hunting for offensive line.
And it's interesting to think about that. It's crazy we have to use this terminology, but you've got some pretty big salaries coming off the books after 26. Whatever Arch is making in terms of his, the chunk of the rev share NIL pie he's getting, Colin Simmons, Trevor Goosby,
Cam Coleman.
Yeah, Cam Coleman, Ryan Wingo, whenever his deal gets finalized. I'm sure Rasheem Biles, I'm sure that transaction wasn't a budget transaction for Texas. So yeah, Jelani McDonald to come back. So there you'll have. It's going to be one of those interesting deals here where you're that NFL or NBA team. Like, man, you've got more cap room than maybe you know what to do with. And now what kind of team can you go put together? Probably around a first-time starting quarterback, whether that's KJ Lacey or Diabell.
Well, and that's going to be the other thing, too. And I'm not saying Texas is going to go full, Garrett Gilbert, Mac Brown and change the philosophy, but it's going to be a brand new quarterback, right? You don't know quite yet what the strengths will be. So I would assume, Jeff, the number one thing that you can help a young quarterback with is a run game. So that's something that I think when looking at the 2027 team, it's almost a guarantee that offensive line will have to be a strength. It will have to generate a run game, because until you see, bullets flying for a young quarterback, you just don't quite know how quickly they'll be able to adapt and start playing for you.
And hopefully, fingers crossed, you've got one of the best young backs in the country going into 27 after Derek.
Yeah,
Cooper.
good point.
So we'll see how all that works out. LKMS, thank you for the super chat. What was Brooks' rating against Florida? CJ, I'll say this: it wasn't good, but
that's mean.
But I will give him. I'll give him a pass for the Florida game to a certain extent, because look, the big eye in the sky don't lie. It was what it was. But you got a guy that had never played guard before that's getting thrown in the swamp at a time where by the time he got in the game, it was pretty clear Texas wasn't going to be able to run the ball. So basically it's like, hey, go ahead and go set up and pass pro at a position you've never played against experienced players, knowing that the defense is just now teeing off on your quarterback. Like, that's a really, really tough spot to put a freshman in.
Yeah, never played guard before, never practiced guard before. I think that's one of the big parts that gets overlooked. He had never taken a single snap at guard. He was on the sideline of that Florida game saying, what do I do? Where do I look? And folks are like, hey, just block whoever's in front of you. And then, as a good team does, and I'm not calling Florida necessarily a good team, but, they got good players, and they'll stunt and they'll twist and they'll make life very difficult, just like what we've seen them do to a number of other teams. So, I think for Nick Brooks, 2026 would have been different for him had he had a full year to play the guard position behind the scenes. And we'll never know, right? Because wherever he ends up, Jeff, I would assume he's going to end up being a tackle prospect. But yeah, that was tough. And I don't remember the grades off the top of my head, but they weren't pretty.
His pass blocking grade was a 0, and I think his overall grade was like an 11.7. It wasn't good. It's like it's like a Celebrity Jeopardy number. Like, that isn't even a real number. It's hard to believe it was, but
when your grades can't get into a PG-13 movie, that's it's not good.
Well said. A quick Florida tangent, real quick. I feel like the conversations and the discussions we have about Florida, like Billy Napier era Florida, are the same conversations like teams a decade ago would have about Texas. Like, if Texas would show up and like randomly like beat a K-State, say, hey, how you gonna lose to Texas? Like, they're terrible this year. Well, I mean, they might not be a great team, but they got players. They got good players. They got talent.
It's like always losing to like South Carolina's a team like that. It's like, you know, South Carolina was like, dude, they put some dudes in the league.
It's kind of like like before. Now they're in a Power 4 league, so it's inconsequential. But I always viewed BYU playing that like you get no credit if you beat BYU, and if you lose, like, oh my gosh, you lost to BYU. Yeah, well, they got like 25, 26-year-old grown men with families playing on the lines of scrimmage against like 19 and 20-year-olds. It's just not fair. So
they took the pre-Indiana route.
Yeah, BYU was doing what IU was doing long ago. I always give anybody credit for scheduling BYU in the non-conference because it's a no-win situation.
Yes.
Jeff C, thank you for the super chat. Said we've gotten a lot of really great players, but our top needs were O-line, guards, and a power back. So yeah, so obviously still trying to piece it together on the offensive line. Still some things to do there. I'll say this though. First off, Dylan Sikorsky is going to a depth piece, a starting piece. He's going to be some kind of piece on the interior because you got him and you beat Tennessee for him. So you beat an SEC opponent for him. So take that for what it's worth. You have to feel at least good about it that, all right, we've got a guy who has proven himself to be like a competent power conference starter as a young guy who played over 400 snaps at Oregon State. So at least you've got that. The power back, I'd started to write this today over on TexasFootball.com, and then I just kind of lost my train of thought because the Nick Brooks stuff happened, and I'm like, well, I'll start working on something. I'll scrap it. I'll do something tomorrow. But at any rate, I think your power back just got the campus, and I think it's Derek Cooper. I think he's your power back in 26.
I like that take, Jeff. And I don't have anything to dispute that yet. And until this offensive line, we see the final piece of this offensive line, he's going to be your biggest body. Spare Michael Terry, right? Because I still don't yet know about the physicality of Michael Terry, which between the tackles, you're going to need a lot of that. So I don't know that for sure yet. And I know folks are going to mention Michael Terry in the chat, and they should. Talented football player. Just he's an unknown for now. Mm-hmm. But I want to get to the point, and we haven't seen this yet, but I want to get to a point, Jeff, where the conversation about a power back or a 6'2", 230 back is all moot because your offensive line moves guys. That's where I hope to get to, and I hope that's the goal for this staff. But at this point, I just you don't know the final five. So,
right.
That's why this conversation is being had.
You go back to 2024, and when C.J. Baxter got hurt, it completely changed the complexion of what that run game was going to be. But even then, like Trey Wisner, if Baxter isn't hurt, we don't know if Trey Wisner is going to emerge as a 1,000-yard back because he didn't get that many opportunities. And Christian Clark may have had a role in that run game, but remember he tore his Achilles in the preseason. And Jarrett Gibson got a chance to be that power back, but like with Gibson, I know like people thought, oh hey, the baby rhino nickname, yeah, that's cool. Well, I don't think Tashard Choice was giving him that nickname as a compliment. It's like, no, like he just kind of puts his head down and doesn't look up and just tries to get what he can. Like, no, like you need to look up. Like you need to know where the contact's coming from. You need to know where you're going and to see your blocks get set up. It just never clicked for Jarrett Gibson, but that's going to be the kind of opportunity I think Derek Cooper's going to have. Maybe Jet Walker gets a chance to do a little something. James Simon's still in the mix. And like you said, like Michael Terry, for me, he's at running back, but to me, he's almost positionless still at this point. Because you could tell me a week in the spring ball, they moved him to wide receiver, and I'd be like, cool, makes sense. Like I don't know if he's going to stay at running back at this point.
You just again haven't seen enough of him at the running back spot yet, and he's only been there a month and a half, 2 months maybe. So look, still fresh to that position at the college level, and I think that's very key, especially in pass protection, understanding where he needs to go when the ball's not in his hands. But running back has plenty of bodies. And what's exciting me the most about all of this, Jeff, is the home run ability of the top two guys, right? Raleek Brown, Hollywood Smothers. Who's to say you even need a goal line back, right? Maybe these guys just score from 30 and beyond because that's all they basically did last year. So I'm being facetious, but point being is, they should be able to have enough wiggle room by how talented they are alone to get into where Texas needs to go.
I know you don't want to use him like this, and I'm not saying turn him into 2018, 19, 2020 Sam Ehlinger. Man, your most effective power run threat might be Arch Manning.
Yeah, could be.
Because he's the best Texas ball carrier I've seen since Jonathan Brooks at like being just understanding where to go, how to manipulate his body, how to avoid contact in short yardage situations. Like, I think he was better at that, just had a natural feel for it. Maybe better than any of the running backs Texas had the last couple of years. Like, I think Arch is really good there. But again, like, I don't want him. I remember Sam carried it, I think, 21 times in that Sugar Bowl against Georgia. Man, if Arch has 21 official rushing attempts, something went really wrong in the game, because that means he got sacked like 8 or 9 times.
There were a few games where I think Sam might have been brain dead. Like, that's harsh, but like the overtime game at home against Oklahoma State, he got rocked time and time again. I think got knocked out cold in one of those Texas OU games as well. You don't want that happening to Arch Manning, not with all of these pieces on the outside and how prolific we all expect this passing game to be. But he can get you and do some of that dirty work. So it's not going to be, something we don't see. That's for sure.
The 2019 game is the one you're talking about, and I remember that day for a few reasons. It was cold. Like, there was a cold front that came in. So usually it's warm for Texas OU. Everybody's bundled up that day. It was my daughter's first Texas OU game. I remember that. And man, there was a point where, like, I was like, dude, they're going to get Sam killed. Like, he may have to leave this game in an ambulance. Like, it was just,
yeah.
I think that was Oklahoma had like 9 sacks in the game. Like Neville Gallimore's draft tape. I remember I was exchanging emails with Bob Sturm at the ticket when the Cowboys drafted him. I'm like, man, just go watch the Texas tape, because Neville Gallimore's draft tape basically is that game.
Yes, 100%. They said a team record or game record for sacks and pressures in that game.
It was rough. Hey, let's go something more positive now, other than thinking about old Texas OU memories that are not so savory. Brown_love, thank you for the super chat, said, is the future now portal shopping for mercenaries? Goodbye high school development on offense. The offensive line and quarterback are still 2 positions where you've got to have, like, guys need to develop. And I do wonder, like, it's one portal cycle I don't think is going to give us enough data, but I do want to see, like, down the road how quickly some of your high school takes at both those. Quarterback's a volatile position anyway. But I want to see it, CJ, because I think we're starting to see it. We're definitely seeing it in college. I think we're starting to see it in the NFL. Like, once you get to this weekend in the divisional round, I think you'll see high-level quarterback play, high-level line play. And in the playoff, we've seen it at the college level. But, man, you just watch your run-of-the-mill, like, NFL game or your run-of-the-mill regular season college football game. I don't think line play and quarterback play has been this abundantly bad in a long, long time, if ever.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. What's really interesting is, I don't have the numbers in front of me in terms of college football playoff teams that had quarterback transfers, but every team in the Final Four had a transfer quarterback. The final will be a team or a matchup with 2 transfer quarterbacks. The one thing for me is how many of those guys on the offensive line came from the portal versus the high school ranks. And, we shot recruiting breakdown earlier today with Jerry Hamilton, Jeff. And, we kind of had, I think, the same conclusion, is that high school recruiting will still, and it will always matter, whether it's as much as it used to or diminishing quite a bit as we're seeing. It will always matter. Imagine a Texas football team over the last 5 years without, name them, a Jahdae Barron, a Byron Murphy, a Tavondre Sweat, and Ethan Burke. These were guys that took time to get to where they wanted to be, but ultimately became NFL level guys, right? A Jordan Whittington, Barron Sorrell, like that list could go on and on and on. So it's going to become more rare, but Texas is going to have to find those gems in the recruiting class to come in, develop, and wait their turn and pay off. Because look, if you can find value in guys that you're not paying a lot of money to, there's more money that you can spend to guys who will be even more of an impact guy for you as well.
I'll give you a really good example. And I think we'll see what happens with Texas. Like, I don't think Sark is going to plan on, like, having some new kind of formation where we only have 3 offensive linemen on the field. We just couldn't find enough guards. He plays center, but man, at this time last year, was anybody looking at Miami's acquisition of James Brockermeyer and be like, wow, man, they really won the portal getting James Brockermeyer, and he's been a really, really good piece for them as a starting center. Like, you can find quality interior linemen in the portal. They may not be big names. They may not be future NFL guys, but at this point, CJ, I think you do have some margin for error considering how good you are at left tackle, your experience at center. And I know he struggled penalties at times, but man, you watch Brandon Baker, like from the start of the year to the end, he got better. Like he was a much better player in December than he was in August.
Well, I think, we've talked about it. I don't think there was a player that developed and progressed more in his play, maybe outside of Arch Manning, than Brandon Baker. And again, going into year 2 as a full-time starter, I think very highly of what he could be on the field in 2026. So again, you have a solid base. Now it's about elevating that through, I believe, 2 more portal additions to get that group to where you absolutely want it to be.
All right, let's go ahead and thank another sponsor here on this Tuesday night live stream. That's going to be Mark Saunders Allstate. When it comes to protecting all of your stuff, wouldn't it be great to have one place that protects it all? Here's some good news. Texas Allstate agent and Texas alum Mark Saunders is the only insurance agent you need. Everything from your home, car, boat, to your motorcycle, RV, ATV. You're looking for someone local in the Austin Round Rock area, give Mark a call at 512-218-8571. Are you in good hands? With more than 35 years of experience, you will be with Texas alum Mark Saunders. Again, give Mark a call at his office today, 512-218-8571. And again, thanks to Mark Saunders Allstate for sponsoring On Texas Football, sponsors the recruiting breakdown, which CJ mentioned. Him, Jerry, and myself recorded earlier today. So again, big thank you to Mark Saunders Allstate for their support of On Texas Football. All right, CJ, let's go ahead and get back to the super chats. If the cursor on my mouse will pop up. There we go. Terrence Jones with the super chat said, hey guys, in my opinion, this will be Steve's best offensive unit since he arrived. How do y'all feel about this offense? So yeah, it's got the potential to be his most explosive just because of the big play elements you got. And, we can talk about the running back. Let's shove the offensive line discussion aside for a minute. I think the differentiator, because Sark has had really good running backs before. He's had deep receiver rooms. I don't think he's been able to tie it together with a quarterback that's got the kind of upside Arch has. No disrespect to Quinn at all. But because of injuries and other things, like we never got to see Quinn put it together, string together those consecutive games that would have allowed him to take off. Arch has number 1 overall pick upside, and to me, that's the difference.
Well, I look at it a little differently. I agree with you here, Jeff, but I look at it a little bit differently. When Sark first got here, what was kind of the bread and butter of this offense, right? It was Roschon Johnson and Bijan Robinson, right? And you had Xavier Worthy, but you didn't necessarily have a second option. Right, Jordan Whittington was too banged up to be, super reliable. On top of that, you had a very young quarterback. As the years went on, Bijan and Roschon departed. Okay, now you have some pieces around you to build a really talented wide receiving core, and you did for the most part. Still, you had a younger quarterback, and towards the back end of 2023, Jonathan Brooks got hurt, so you're relying on some smaller, inexperienced running backs. So you didn't have a full arsenal of the weapons that you anticipated. Last year in 2024, you're very hamstrung at the offensive line and the running game, right? You didn't necessarily have that bell cow guy. Now, where's the flaw?
Right.
I'm taking the offensive line out of the conversation for now. I do think it will get to a point where it's not a total disaster. And I don't think it will be, right? You have a first round left tackle. But point is, where's a position room at tight end, at wide receiver, at running back, or at quarterback that's not up to snuff? There isn't one. And on top of that, look, all of this is coming together in the final year of Arch Manning. And what I mean by that is you have a veteran guy, a guy that knows the system, a guy that was, head over heels different in terms of his play as the season progressed in 2025. I think absolutely this is going to be the most potent offense Steve Sarkisian's had at Texas, and probably the most thorough when it comes to what you can do, given you have 2, probably 3 really good backs, 3 really talented tight ends who all saw the field in 2025, and then a stable of wide receivers that could go probably receiver for receiver against the deepest in the entire country.
Yeah, it's I go back to the 23 offense, and I think years from now, Texas fans will look back and like, man, you had Quinn Ewers and Jonathan Brooks, like, hey, Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell, like, you had some dudes. You had to stretch the field tight end with Jatavian Sanders. Gunnar Helm was your number 2 tight end, and we didn't know Gunnar Helm what he was going to become at that time. But my thing going back to the 23 offense, like you said, CJ, like Quinn gets hurt in that game in Houston. When Malik Murphy's in there playing quarterback, that's when Jonathan Brooks starts to establish himself. And then Quinn comes back for that TCU game in Fort Worth, and then immediately Jonathan Brooks blows his knee out and is done for the year. So we never got to see that 23 offense with all the pieces at their best, at their peak at the same time. And I wish we would have, because that offense at its peak with all those pieces was good enough to win you a national championship. And I will die on the hill that if Jonathan Brooks doesn't get hurt, I think Texas beats Michigan and wins a national championship. I really, truly, with every fiber of my being, believe that.
I like that take. I don't disagree because, what happened in that Washington game, aside from Michael Penix having, a Joe Burrow level game, one of the best I've ever seen, 2 running back fumbles, one in the red zone, one leaving your own red zone. So it doesn't happen with Jay Brooks.
Yeah, and Sark would have trusted Brooks to where when Washington, they were defending the Texas RPOs, but they weren't defending the run part. It was PP over Washington. Like they're throwing the ball. Like let's if they want to run it for 6 yards, like we'll give them the 6 yards. With Jonathan Brooks, I think Sark would have been like, okay, well then we'll run it with Brooks until you decide to stop it. I just don't. He didn't have the trust in Baxter or Blue at that point like you would have had with Brooks. I think that makes a really huge difference too. But thank you for the super chat, Terrence. All right, Cubed, thank you for the super chat. Said, what's the deadline for getting guys committed so they can get in for the spring semester? CJ, I want to say Friday maybe is the last ad drop date. It's either Friday or the following Monday, but I think the 20th is the date where I think after that day, I think you have to have special permission from the dean to enroll somebody. So technically there is no deadline really.
As far as I understand it. And, again, what happens if you just have to take a semester off? I mean, just enroll in the summer and everything's good. Is that how that goes?
I don't know. Like it's probably easier to do that with guys that are like the older type guys that you're going to recruit that are probably closer to a degree. It's like, okay, we'll throw you in a couple classes and like you can get, back on track this summer or whatever. It
is. I was being snarky on Twitter earlier, as one does. But when the team dropped its, 3.31 GPA for 2025, that's great. And I went out, Jeff, and I said, hey, these kids still care about their education. And, I believe that to an extent. There are some guys that still truly care about, what's next for them after football. But, I mean, we all basically know what's going on in college football at the moment. So, do they care if they're not in classes for a semester? I'm sure some won't care.
Somebody mentioned it earlier in the chat. I apologize. I didn't see who posted it, but we were talking about transfer quarterbacks like TJ Finley, Texas State football legend. TJ Finley, he's on his 7th school. Like, you're majoring in football at that point. Like you can't tell me different at that point.
He didn't go to school. What is it? The Cordell Jones line. He didn't come here to play school. Well, he didn't go to either of his 7 schools to play football either. So. Yeah. We're just gonna have to name the portal after him. I think that's the only solution here.
Yeah, I think Jamon Tapp, former Longhorn, just went in the portal. I think he's about to be on school 4.
Memphis.
Yeah. So
going to Memphis.
Yeah, I think yeah, because it would be Texas, Arizona State, Southern Miss. He's on his 4th. It's wild how much some of these guys transfer. Dro Franco 33, thank you for the super chat. How does this wide receiver room compare to the 2023 wide receiver room? CJ, it's different because I don't think you have anybody that just has the out-and-out world-class speed like Xavier Worthy does. But at the same time, all due respect to A.D. Mitchell, you didn't have anybody in that room that has the kind of downfield contested catch ability that Cam Coleman has.
Oh, yeah.
So it's different.
You might have 2. Emmett Mosley, is a guy who I think has as sure hands as anybody on this roster at the moment. Every time the ball is thrown to him in 2025, I sat there and said, hey, I want to see more of that because I trust his hands more and more and more. So it is different. But I mean, that's good. I don't know. I'd have to go look, Jeff.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about Emmett Mosley in the slot? Because that really intrigues me. Because I just go back to some of the stuff he did in the Georgia game that really intrigues me about him being the slot guy. And I guess the good thing is any of those top three guys can play in the slot. Wingo can play there. Coleman can play there. I think that's going to help Cam Coleman when you could move him around a little bit. But I don't know. I kind of dig Mosley if he ends up being the guy that gets the bulk of the slot snaps.
I think I would start with Mosley more as your slot guy. And then, you know, as we've seen, you know, Wingo's going to see some snaps there. Wingo also more as your motion guy, kind of moving into that DeAndre Moore, you know, pre-snap movement guy. We saw that obviously a lot in 2025. I don't want to put you on the spot here, Jeff. So if you don't have an answer here, that's completely fine. But I was trying to think of a comparison, just an NFL comp to Cam Coleman. I don't think he has the hip fluidity or route ability of that of like a Julio Jones or anything like that. But his big play ability for the size that he has, I mean, that has I landed on AJ Green, and I don't know if he has the top end speed there, but I don't know if you have anybody or if you've thought of anybody on that sense. But I keep getting stuck on what Cam Coleman might be in this offense, plus what he will eventually be in the NFL.
No, I think he's in that mold. Like he's that kind of talent. Like I don't again, to your point, like I don't know if he's got maybe the super high end athleticism of one of those guys. But yeah, the body type, the playmaking ability. George Pickens, Eminem Recovery in the chat says George Pickens. That's another name I've heard get brought up regarding Cam Coleman. But body type wise, he reminds me a lot of Julio Jones. I don't know that he's just the all around freak that Julio is physically, but body type wise, it's close, I think.
T. Higgins isn't bad. You know, it's interesting. Yeah. You know, and you know, I think Julio was a guy where the hips, you know, the ability to run routes like he was 5'10", 5'11", you know, that's hard to come by when you're 6'2", 6'3". I don't think right now you have that with Cam Coleman, but the tough catch ability, the hands, the body control, that all stands out to me as something that you just can't teach.
Marco Mendez says he is another UT Roy Williams. I guess Cam Coleman would now supplant Ryan Wingo as the most physically imposing, the most physically impressive, physically gifted wide receiver I've seen at Texas since Roy Williams. That's kind of close to Roy. Xavier Worthy was just different because the speed, like you can't do that. But like, hey, Roy made some great catches, and to me, I know everybody's like, oh, you never scored a touchdown against Oklahoma. To me, Roy Williams still the GOAT of Texas receivers, whatever. Like that's just me, my personal ranking. But like, I think we forget like Roy at his size in high school was like a legit like sub 10, 500 meter guy who was a 24, 25 foot long jumper, like just an insane athlete, an insane explosive athlete at his size. I don't know if Cam Coleman's got that kind of freakiness, CJ, but again, from a body type standpoint, yeah, he probably is the closest thing to Roy Williams since Roy Williams.
Yeah, and I saw one of the comments like, hey, let's compare these guys to Hall of Famers. Look, when you come in with a .9985 composite rating, you're the highest wide receiver recruit in the country. I think that's fair to an extent, right? Comparisons are all about projections and what they will eventually become. If you're the best wide receiver amongst thousands in the country coming out of high school, that's kind of where your career trajectory is expected.
Like he's the expectation is if he hits his ceiling at Texas, he'll be a top 15, maybe first wide receiver in the draft type pick. Like he's that physically gifted. He's got that kind of talent.
Speaking of which, real quick, and I don't want to be too long on this.
No, go ahead.
When we start looking at that 27 draft, Jeff, Colin Simmons, Arch Manning, Cam Coleman, Trevor Goosby.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about the Ohio State game because then you'll throw in, I don't know what Julian Sands' situation is, but Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah.
going to be in that conversation for number 1 overall. Like that Texas Ohio State game, we'll look at these 2 games against Ohio State and look back at it like, man, how many high draft picks, hopefully down the line, it's how many Pro Bowl guys, how many all pros were on that field. It's got a chance to be an all-timer. Diggs TX, thank you for the super chat. We can't complain about O-line not staying for development when every year we're afraid to start guys that have 3 years in the program but no starts. I mean, I guess we're getting to the Neto Mozelo discussion, and I would just say there's probably a reason, CJ, why in a pinch in Gainesville they went with Nick Brooks over Neto.
I think that was just the physical ability, is, hey, we can teach him on the fly where to look, what the assignments are, who to block, but just get a big body out there that is going to be difficult to push backward. And that was Nick Brooks. Otherwise, we probably would have seen a Nate Kibble in the instance, but staff went a different direction. And again, that's kind of why I'm okay with the offensive line numbers thinning, because of the sense that you only need 8. And if they feel really good about that 8, Jeff, then you're going to be in good shape regardless. And here's where I see a lot of pushback on that is, well, what about injuries? If anybody gets hurt on your starting lineup, you're screwed, right?
Yeah.
That's at any position. If Colin Simmons goes down, there's not another Colin Simmons. If Arch Manning goes down, you don't have another Arch Manning. You might have someone that's pretty close, right? You might have a cornerback that can step in and be, what you hope Cade Phillips is in 2026, Jeff, but it's not who that is, and that's why they're starting. So, yeah, injuries are a risk. I get that, but odds are your number 9 offensive lineman isn't going to be what your number 2 or 3 was anyway. So that's just how it is.
I know there were a lot of creative liberties taken in the Moneyball movie compared to what actually happened and what was in the book, but I was thinking about that scene when they're talking about first baseman and replacing Giambi, because is there another first baseman like Giambi? No, not really. And if there was, can we afford him? No, we can't. What the bleep are you talking about, man? Like that's it's kind of where we're at. All right, Q, we'll get to this one. I've got one more sponsor read, then we'll wrap it up with this last super chat. But all right, Cubed says portal quarterback a la Matthew Caldwell. I know KJ and Dia are highly rated, but they're young. CJ, maybe, but I think the staff feels better about KJ Lacey right now than they did about Trey Owens or KJ Lacey at this time last year.
Yeah, definitely feel really good about KJ Lacey. I think Dia will be a ways away, of course. And, quarterback's different than what we're seeing in the portal currently. I think all of these guys buy in for the development. And obviously when they're piecing together offensive lines and wide receivers like we're seeing with Arch, why would they go anywhere else, right? Just bide your time and get on the field and you'll have basically the world to play with. But no, I still think a portal quarterback is on the table. If Arch should go down, look, it'll be KJ Lacey, but do you want, Diabell's first snaps to be in an instance where, he's got to save the day? I don't know. I think you still go out there and you get yourself a guy who maybe played in the WAC or the Sun Belt or something like that, might be off to being a GA after football, very similarly to Matthew Caldwell, and come in and be like, hey, how about you make a pretty penny your final year, get a degree from Texas, and come be our emergence, basically an e-bug in hockey.
Man, Burn Orange Horn, we're talking about Cam Coleman comparisons, reminds me most of ex-Florida wide receiver Travis Taylor. That was a fun and good wide receiver and an all-time draft bust of the 2000s. So thank you for bringing him up, Burn Orange Horn. Let's thank our lead sponsor one more time for this Tuesday night live stream. That's our friend Andy Ludicky over at My Perfect Franchise. Do you want control over your own destiny? Then maybe franchise ownership is right for you. If you think that could be the case, then call Andy Ludicky. He's an expert at placing people in the right franchise that fits your strengths and fits your finances. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your own destiny, call Andy or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net, and the phone number is 404-973-9901. And again, big thank you to Andy Ludicky at My Perfect Franchise for being our lead sponsor here on the Tuesday night live stream. All right, CJ, let's get to this last super chat here from Rodney Smith. Thank you, Rodney. How long until, quote, I didn't come here to play school, end quote, becomes a reality and enrolling in class will no longer be required? I hope it doesn't get to that point, because I at least like the idea, like CJ said earlier, that the idea that some guys are taking advantage of the educational opportunity and getting a degree or working towards one. I'd like to think that still exists, but hey, I was born at night, but it wasn't last night. Like I get it. I get what's happening here.
Yeah, no, I hope it doesn't come to that. I think it's fun for kids to go to college and say, hey, so and so is in my class. I sat next to this guy. He was in my group project. That's cool. I don't know if that matters to, the student athletes at all, but hey, for, guys like you and I, Jeff, I'm sure it was, we both have stories of walking around campus and seeing so and so, doing whatever on campus, going to school, getting something out of the vending machine, whatever. I think that's fun. So hopefully that doesn't ever disappear, because at that point, just go ahead and slap the minor league label on college football, and that's where we're at.
Yeah, hopefully though some guys do take advantage, because hey, some got to remember, not all of these guys are getting a part of that rev share pie. There's just not enough for it to go around. So hopefully some guys are taking advantage. CJ, thanks for the knowledge and expertise on the live stream. As always, big thank you to producer Matt, the MVP here on Texas Football, for doing what he does each and every night behind the scenes. And thank you again to our sponsors. Our lead sponsor for the Tuesday Night live stream, that's Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. Also, big shout out to Duck Camp, to Mark Saunders Allstate, and to Advanced Pain Care for their sponsorship of the live stream. Don't forget, if you're not a member over at ontexasfootball.com, first-time subscribers can take advantage of our Portal Madness special. We can only cover so much here on the channel. Everything we get, every bit of information we get, the first place it goes is up. It's posted over on TexasFootball.com. And first-time subscribers, you get your first month of access over on TexasFootball.com for just $1. You can't get anything of value for $1 in this world anymore. We're changing that for you over on TexasFootball.com. Get over there. Take advantage of the Portal Madness special right now. Everybody, thank you so much for the participation in the chat. Thank you for the super chats tonight, as always. If you have any other questions, comments, concern, the guys will be back at it bright and early tomorrow morning with coffee and football, and then our normal Wednesday programming leading up to the Wednesday live stream, which actually, CJ, tomorrow night I will not be a part of. Marcus Myers will be filling in for me tomorrow, and then I will be sitting in for Marcus on the Thursday live stream. So just a little bit of change, but hey, we'll bring you the live streams nonetheless. No matter who is here, we will have it for you. We'll be discussing all the latest news. See if any new names pop up in the portal tomorrow, if anything happens. With tomorrow, CJ, being the last day of the dead period, I would expect Thursday to be quite a busy day for the Longhorns and everybody else.
Absolutely. We'll have it all covered for you. Some visitors back on campus this weekend, especially with a loaded junior day coming up on the 17th.
Absolutely. High school recruiting still matters, folks. And you can check out Jerry and CJ and I talk a little bit of junior day in this week's edition of the Recruiting Breakdown, which is on the channel right now. All right. For CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Hatt. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, welcome.